We back.
Yes, sir.
Good. Very special episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in and watching us and listening. Trev, good to see you, my brother.
Pleasure to see you, Dr. J. Always an honor and a privilege, man.
Good. So we're going to jump right into it. It's a special episode where we talk about community violence.
Right.
And not really recent spike, but there's been a spike and a noticeable spike in violence in our neighborhoods. And the Black Nursing Association Men's Committee, we're talking about it in different urban areas. And we're going to focus on New York City because this is our area that we live in. As you know, recently we've had different things going on in our neighborhoods, even to the point where our own mayor, black man, newly elected Eric Adams, went as far to saying he wanted to ban drill music because he felt like drill music played a role in it. And I wanted us to talk about violence from a healthcare standpoint because violence is a health problem.
Agreed.
Right? If you get shot, you end up in the hospital. Right. You end up needing care.
As well as the mental health aspect that we could expand on later is a large factor of what leads to, violence. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what we were doing was, as the Men's Health Committee, we really wanted to talk about how does nursing play a role in it, how does healthcare play a role in it, and hoping to solve some of these issues. And I thought it would be amazing if we collaborated with From the Block to the Boardroom and talked about this issue because we do a lot of stuff like this as well. Right. Plus, it's also important because with your background, in terms of you being in a financial world, that plays a part into solutions, and your background in terms of mentoring also plays into it. So I felt like you would be a dope and perfect individual to do one of our barbershop talk series.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. So let's just start with Eric Adams and wanting to ban drill music.
Okay.
How do you feel about him saying that and the role that you either see drill music or not see drill music playing into violence?
So that's an interesting question, Dr. J. Let's start. So Eric Adams grew up in South Jamaica. The typical story of that era, of that generation. We know Eric Adams wasn't a brother who grew up of privilege. So there is very much a connection there to the working class or the lower class, if you will, Black New York City demographic, right? He's not totally a stranger or foreign to that culture. He's from that culture. Also, I think we have to keep in mind also Eric Adams was a police officer for years. That was his career. Prior to politics, he was a member of the NYPD law enforcement. So I think we have to keep that in mind too, right? Like, I think other people don't understand that. When people say blue lives matter, right? They forget that black people can be blue. So I think we also got to make sure we keep that in mind. Just because you're a brother doesn't mean that you might not have ties to something else. So we do have to keep in mind that Eric Adams is typically going to have a pro-police agenda or side with law enforcement, if you will. He was on law enforcement, his whole life prior to politics. So that kind of paints how Eric Adams is going to see things. Eric Adams is also an older man now, not old as some other politicians we've had, Ed Koch and so forth, but he's older. There's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect. And the reason why I say there's a disconnect because when you analyze drill music strictly from the art form lens, right, from the music lens, but don't really look into the socioeconomics that play a factor into what's even driving this music, I can tell that you don't fully see the full picture. Because I promise you that, okay, maybe money won't be made from music that can possibly finance things that may go back into some of this stuff. Maybe the notoriety isn't there, right? The virality. A lot of this stuff goes viral, and we can argue that that might be a fuel of it too. But I promise you that these issues aren't just going to disappear because if you cancel drill music. Because at the end of the day, the music and the content is a reflection of what's actually going on with certain young men who have different affiliations in the city. Particularly in Brooklyn. I know Bronx has it going right now too. So first off, it's not just a music thing. The music is a reflection of what's going on. Like it's how people watch reality TV. This is reality music, basically, right? So you want to turn on TV and see people living their life normally. Well, all right, we're gonna make some songs, but these songs ain't "I love you" song ballads or this that. No, we're gonna tell you about what we really doing. You know what I mean?
I'm glad he's home now and everything he's doing, but we all remember Bobby Shmurda's hit single, and a lot of people was like how incriminating it was, but it was like at that point in time, nobody thought it was going to be a thing. It was just, he was putting a real story of his past 2 weeks. And we remember the certain lyrics on wax. You know, like, that's all it really was. The goal, it wasn't like he was already a signed artist trying to put out a label single and trying to profit off of what goes on day-to-day basis. It was just something he had put out there. So I say like to say is that, man, it's a reflection of reality. So I don't really know if you do that. I'm not saying that it can't help, but as you started with so articulately said, it's a multifaceted thing. So, okay, that in conjunction with what? You know, I try not to pick sides, you know, in the fight. But when I saw the meeting that he had, you know, I feel like I only saw Wu members there, Wu and Crip members there. But I was like, but you have multiple players in the drill scene and multiple people who have issues, right? So it's like when you have like a political issue, how can you only have Dems or only have Republicans? How can you only have people from the Northeast, nobody from the Southwest or whatever the case may be? So I saw that. I was like, well, that's nice. That's good optics. But I really don't know how fruitful it will be if there's no one from some of the other sides, from the different oppositions, you know, present.
Funny enough is because when you sent me that picture that morning.
Yeah, I sent it to you, yeah.
First thing I said to you, I was like, they're missing half of the problem.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's really just a political photo.
Right.
And if it's a political photo, it means that you don't really have any intention on fixing a problem.
Actually, yeah.
You just want to appear like you fixed the problem.
Right, right.
And I think the word that highlights that is what you said. There's a disconnect. He is disconnected from what's causing the problems in the street. And the only thing that he's doing is saying, oh, these are rappers that are signed or connected to major labels who have money and influence. So that's who they're going to put next to the mayor. Because if they can put their person that they hire, their employee next to the mayor,
right,
it makes them look good. It rises up their stock, makes people want to say, oh, they're peaceful. They're not the one causing these problems. But it's the problem is a two-way street. If not, a lot of times 3, 4, 5, 6-way street.
Ways, yep,
right? A 4-way stop sign. And if you only have one side, it's a problem. Because when you look at it, one of the rappers there, and I'm not going to say names, one of the rappers there who was there and they were talking, saying, look, we're looking to try to fix the problem. Right afterwards, he did another interview and they said, because somebody called them on it, and they said, do you have any intention on actually sitting down with people you have actual problems with? Because you don't have no problems with anybody in that photo.
Right.
And his response was like, no, I have no intentions of ever doing that. What do we need to sit down and talk about? So it means that the cycle's going to keep going, but we got a great photo op.
Right.
And when we talk about that disconnect, you know, the first thing is, what would make somebody want to sit up there and talk about things that happen in the street on an actual record?
True.
Or talk about, I'm going to spin till I see you and shoot you and kill you. And the first thing I think about is, when certain things are normalized, it doesn't become a big deal to actually do it.
That's real.
And that's both good and bad. And
yeah.
I think about one of my favorite Jay-Z songs. It's easily one of my top 3 favorite Jay-Z songs. It's called Allure off the Black Album.
Okay.
And in it, he says, I put my feet in the footprints left to me without saying a word. The ghetto's got a mental telepathy. Man, my brother hustles so naturally. Up next is me. This world perplexes me. And I know how this story ends.
But still, I play the star and role and call Lito's way. Yep,
it's just like, meaning, I know I die or go to jail at the end of this. But I do it because it perplexes me. But also,
I've normalized it. This is my fate. This is what we do. This is how we, as young black men in this environment, this is how we get income. We tap into the illegal markets, right? So you might not even give the legal markets a chance because you don't see it. You don't, and a quote that you always say, you can't be that which you do not see.
Absolutely.
So you see everyone that looks like you doing this, you just, and it's a normalized way of living. It's just, this is what you do.
Yeah. So when I look at drill music and I look at the problem of violence in the communities, I look at drill music and I look at rappers in Brooklyn who have gone on to become famous that have 2 things in common.
Yeah.
Right? 1, they were Crip, and 2, they shouted GDK a lot on their music. Bobby Smurda and Roddy Rebel, right? Then Pop Smoke, then Fabio. All the same, right? They all have that in common.
Yeah.
And because that's rewarded, meaning they get popularized, what you end up having, rappers in the Bronx now. before K Flock went to jail. He was screaming, "Oh, I'm GDK," and they were on Instagram Live with each other, going, "Yo, you don't know no GDs. How you GDK?" And it was, "Yo, hey," because you've seen it and it's been normalized that this is rewarded.
Right.
And to me, it makes me say, they don't really care about beefing with each other. What they really care about is getting money and getting out the hood.
True.
But to them, the only thing that's been normalized on how they're going to get up out the hood is
conflict.
either rapping or some sort of conflict.
Some kind of conflict.
Right?
See. Okay.
So when I look at it and I talk about it being a multifaceted problem, I start thinking, how do we replace that image of success to them?
Right.
That looks like a rapper that has to diss his enemies, drop their sign, say they're going to kill each other. How do we replace that image with the businessman, with the healthcare worker, with the person in economics, with the lawyer, with the judge, with the doctor, right? With the social worker. How do we replace that? And it is tough, right? Like you look at the economics of New York City. One of the things I was thinking about recently was I had the unfortunate scenario of being around a bunch of police officers all Thursday, right? Not unfortunate because they're unfortunate people to hang out with, but the unfortunate scenario caused me to have to be around them all day, right? And the one thing I kept thinking to myself was, we started talking about salaries, the police officers and myself. Okay. And I often said this about teachers, which is teachers teach in neighborhoods that they can't afford to live in. Meaning when you think about the affordable housing that goes on, and you look at some of the actual prices of affordable housing, they'll tell you need to make between $85,000 and $130,000, but teachers come in making $60,000. And in my head, I'm like, so where are they supposed to live?
Oh yeah.
Right. So,
but not even that. If you think of this desired school districts too, right? Upper East Side, this that. Like most teachers would argue, the neighbors they want to teach in the desired neighborhoods would probably price themselves out, you know. But that's where you'll find easier to work with kids, if you will, and only really easy to work with, not because they're any smarter, but just because they come from more stable homes and have more reinforcements. Yeah.
But then I also looked at, because as we was talking, the police officers and myself, and I was like, oh wait, how much do y'all make again? How much do y'all start out? When do y'all hit your top salary? And I started thinking to myself, oh, y'all can't afford to live in some of these affordable housing neighbor / buildings that they just built either.
Right.
So we all are being placed in a system pit against each other, but we all have the same problem.
Right.
We all trying to find success and get to a place that's comfortable to actually live in.
Right.
Right. So like I think about that, replacing that image. I think about money that it would take to fix some of these problems, and it's always, bro, like when you talk about city money, federal funding, state funding, there's always the amount of money that is allotted, which is X, and the amount of money that actually reaches the problem, which is Z. And oftentimes, the why
between
you often end up saying, why is there so much money missing?
Right.
Like
what happened? Yeah.
Bro,
yeah.
You'll say the police department got a $60 billion budget. Do you see $60 billion worth of cops on the streets? Not at all.
I don't know how to equate. I don't know what that looks like, but yeah, I don't know if I feel 60 billion worth of safeness, if that's how you measure it.
Right.
Barometer,
if you look at the billions of dollars that's spent on education, meaning that's allotted to education.
Right.
It's not that many billions that gets it, right? Like it's just so much that's always missing with that why.
Yeah.
And there's a disconnect of, instead of putting this through people's hands that's going to charge processing fees, that's going to charge all these miscellaneous fees, why not give it straight to the community people to actually do this work, to put these foundations?
I think that's fair. It just has to be the right community people, right?
Absolutely.
The right community organizations, and because we've had that issue internally ourselves too, right? Sometimes not the best advocates internally in the community who have the plugs into politics and things like that, and they're part of that why lack of trickle down too, you know. So I don't mind that approach. I think it probably just takes more work on the city to really investigate and figure out who those people actually are, you know? Yeah.
So for me, like, I think about, we got this new grant called through NIH, National Institute of Health, called All of Us. and it charges us with the responsibility of enrolling more people that are historically disadvantaged into research.
Okay.
But for me, it's more so, how do we reimagine?
Conducting the research or being the research subject?
And that's the key.
Okay.
Because it's both.
Got you.
It wasn't, because when we had one of the first meetings, one of the things I told them was, I can't advocate for my people to be in research if the people that's doing the research on them don't look like them.
Real. Yep.
And I think when we take it a step farther is, it has to be the people who come from those neighborhoods and in those situations that also become the researchers.
Right.
Because it gets rid of that disconnect.
Agreed.
Right? And one of the things I'm into now is called citizen scientist. You ever heard of the term?
No, I haven't.
So what it is it pretty much says that there are people with PhDs that are specialists in research, right? Then there's people with other doctorates that do research for different areas. It could be a DNP, an education doctorate, a lawyer. So citizen scientist is really saying that there's people who are considered non-healthcare people who are better at doing research in their neighborhoods or where they grew up from than people with PhDs.
Gotcha.
Because somebody with a PhD comes in and they only look at something from this goes into this parameter.
Right. They have methodologies that they apply when doing research, and those methodologies might not take into, some of the different elements that are unique to that neighborhood. So yeah, I could definitely see that.
Exactly. Yeah. So what these citizen scientists would do, like in one project that I'm involved in, surrounding lung cancer in black men, it's people from the neighborhood that you educate, right? So they'll get different people to educate. So I'm one of the consultants. I'll educate them on, this is the signs of lung cancer, this is why you should stop, this is who you can refer to, this is how you answer some of the questions people will talk to. Mm-hmm. And what happens is people in the neighborhoods will talk to them way quicker than they would talk to me.
For sure.
Right? And I think that...
The trust factor.
Absolutely.
The trust and a relatability factor.
Look like you, come from the same neighborhoods. Right. And also, when that person tells you they're not interested, you know exactly why they're not interested. So you know how to go about talking to them to try to change their mind.
Right.
And for my thing, I'm thinking we probably need to employ citizen scientists in this multifaceted problem as well. Because you need people that really came from these streets and have a leg in these streets that can say, all right, let's sit down and let's talk about this. Right. Because I can get down and talk very effectively. Right. I can talk to these young men about there's a better way and this is why it's the better way. Because one of the biggest problems I think that our young men and women are having right now is that they're not taught to value life. They're taught that life for them ends at a certain age. So and that age is very young. Yeah. So you enjoy the moment even more. Right? Like you remember the movie Troy where Achilles said, the gods envy us because we're mortal. Mm-hmm. So everything is more beautiful because any moment could be our last. True. That, really living that lifestyle comes out more if your last moment is less. Yeah. So if you think you ain't going to see it to 21, by the time you get to 13, I'm hopping through everything. Right? I'm hopping off the stoop, as the young boy said. Right. And I'm trying to run, because I'm going to be dead or in jail. Right. So we have to teach them how to value life.
I was hearing that somewhere. They was talking about I forgot what interview I was watching on a podcast. It might have been The Pivot with Fred Taylor and Ryan Clark and those brothers. And they was talking about just the value in growing old. It's cool, black men. It's cool to grow old. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to reach a ripe old age and have and seen change and seen things and have a legacy under you. And yeah, that's a part of it. And I thought of what you were saying too. And this goes in with mentorship too. Everyone can't mentor everyone, right? Because Absolutely. A large part of it, especially with the conversation that we're having specifically, those brothers need to be able. They got to even want to. They have to be receptive to the message. And a lot of what's going to affect the how much they receive is if they even feel like they can relate to the person talking to them, if they even want to hear them. So, there's not many, but there are figures who are successful in a variety of different disciplines and careers, but who have ties or was once originally connected to a similar plight or predicament as some of these young brothers who are gang affiliated, in Brooklyn and Bronx right now throughout the city. And they might resonate stronger with these brothers than someone who's just from a straight up politician or a straight up businessman or a straight up doctor, whatever the case may be, because right away the young brother's looking like, well, bro, you never had to live this life, so you don't get the problem. And I think people are more willing to open up to someone who they think's who sees themselves in them. Like when I look at you, brother, I see a younger version of myself, and they also can see themselves in this older version of them, right? So it's almost like talking to the man in the mirror, just of different times. And I think when you have that element, then you can really have a conversation. You know, there's even certain stuff like even myself, like, you know, depending on who the person, I was like, I might not really be the person to mentor that person. Because that young brother might feel, and I wasn't in the field like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So for that brother, that level of where he at, I might not be the right person to mentor him because we're not going to relate, you know? But there's someone who's good for him, but I think that's a key part, for sure.
And then I think the other part of that is after deploying them to get these people involved, meaning after deploying these citizen scientists, you also got to bring them back in to sit at the table and have an actual seat at this decision-making table.
Right, to put the input now, what they've gathered into what takes place.
Because you'll be able to tell them certain things like, this young man right here is not going to listen to anything you have to say in school because he's dealing with this at home.
Right.
Like, his mom is on drugs, or he don't know where his father is, or he can't eat when he go home, or his living situation is crazy. He don't care about anything that have to go on in school.
Right.
So we can't fix the school problem until we fix that problem.
Fix the life problem.
Right? And then even after that...
And you see, that's why I said the key thing about these other school districts, right? Even out on Long Island, they're not smarter kids. They just come to school more willing to learn, or more able to learn, right? Because they have more stable environments. Which is, you know, it'll naturally make you, okay, like, I'm not worried about food. I didn't see something crazy last night, this, that. So I'm more willing to open my book and, you know, go through chapter 3 and let's go through trigonometry, you know, versus the student who comes to school, bro, his mind is elsewhere. He's in there just drifting off, you know, because of all that's taking place. So I think a lot of times, like you said, there's a life problem which does supersede the school problem or just the community, what the case may be. Yeah.
And it's just, we got to fix those life problems.
Yeah.
We got to get people that really know. Let's not pay experts to then pay somebody else pennies on the dollar to go look at these problems.
I mean, think about why we even started From the Block to the Boardroom podcast to begin with. You know, we were judging the black male podcast space. Podcast is hosted by black men. And, you know, being the versatile brothers we are, we felt like there was a lack of voices who could speak to both sides. Mm-hmm. We felt like there were professional brothers who would critique sometimes, like analyze some of the things that take place in the inner city, but weren't so connected or tapped into the inner city like you and I are, professionals who are still tapped in or come from that environment, and vice versa. Maybe brothers who made it through entertainment or sports or whatever who have ties to the inner city but would try to speak on health or business or things of that nature, and they're not really too well versed there, so they're spreading false information or false angles. So in summary, it's key to have people who have ties to multiple angles, who can see humanity from multiple angles and really provide perspective. That's the key, more perspective, you know, not narrow-sighted vision.
Absolutely, brother. Well, this is just a mini starting a conversation.
We're gonna keep it going, bro.
I appreciate it. Man. It's good seeing you.
For sure, bro.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely. And, you know, again, from great collaboration between Great New York City Black Nursing Association, From the Block to the Boardroom.
Absolutely. Shout out all of us. That grant sounds amazing. Shout out the Greater New York City Black Nursing Association, everything you guys got going. Shout out you, Dr. J.
Appreciate
you having me, man.
All right.
Thank you, guys.